All right, hey everybody, welcome to RogueCast, the show where we specifically discuss nothing specific at all. I'm your host, Travis Kunze, and today we're going to be discussing the topic of entrepreneurship. As many of the people who listen to the show know, entrepreneurship is a big passion of mine. Obviously, it would be since I have started several businesses. And today we have a guest with us who has also started several businesses. He's a pilot, photographer, and serial entrepreneur. I would like to welcome Cody McLain to the show. Thank you for joining us, Cody.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I understand that you've started several businesses, and it looks like you're still actively involved in about two of them. Is that true?
Yep. Still running them. It's been quite a while. I started my first business when I was just 15. And since then, I've started maybe anywhere from 7 to 10 or 11 different businesses. Some of them were quite small, but I've had two large exits thus far, and they were primarily just hosting companies. And I know when I was 15, I was still in just middle school, actually, when I first started my company. And it was actually just selling web hosting services. And I was just posting on online web forums about what I was offering. And I was just a reseller at HostGator. And I moved all the way from becoming a reseller at HostGator to a point where I had about 100 servers at a data center. And then at some point, I sold my first company, and then I went and sold my second company. And then that led me to have lots of kind of have like an entrepreneur vacation, if you will, where I kind of discovered my own interpersonal skills. And then I went right back into it and started two more businesses. And the ones that I have today, I have Wirefuse Media, which is a web design company. And then my primary and biggest focus right now is Support Ninja, which provides outsourced support to other technology companies and startups.
Okay, awesome. So with Support Ninja, you do stuff along the lines of, like, if a company needs graphic designs for a project or for a client, is that kind of what you tend to assist with?
Well, actually, it's more about customer support and back office support. So we actually have an office in the Philippines, and right now we have a little over 100 staff, and it's about 2 years old. And what we really do is actually the back office support for lots of different startups. So, for example, there's a very large ride sharing company that we have where we actually do the background checks for them. Where whenever you take a picture of your ID, we actually look at the ID and then enter it into the system for the actual background check. We also do lots of customer support for huge apps, and we do lots of moderation. There's also a platform that basically helps to sell online ticket sales. And so if you wanted to sell your ticket for a concert or a venue, you could take a picture of it, and then our guys basically look at the picture, and then we enter that code and the ticket number and all that into the system so it can be sold on the platform. So lots of content moderation in the back end. We also have a social media company where basically whenever you if you report content, our guys will actually look at the content and determine what action to take within that. So it's lots of back office support for startups. And so I like to think of it in that we really help these startups thrive because we're taking a huge aspect of the management aspect of what they're actually trying to do and sell, and we take that off their shoulders for them.
Okay, that's actually really cool. I might have to keep you guys in mind as my business grows for some of the stuff that we have, because I know the stuff that bogs us down the most is definitely that back office stuff that most of the time clients or customers or people who just enjoy your products never get to see it all. They don't know about everything that's going on in the background, all of the struggles and support and everything like that. So I think that's really cool that you have a business dedicated just to that specifically.
Yeah.
So you said you started your first business when you were 15 years old. What was that business? What inspired you to start a business at that young of an age?
So it was a web hosting company, and it was actually a friend of mine. My friend wanted to buy an Xbox, and then he was in trouble with his mom, and so apparently he wanted to go and try and figure out how to make money. And so we were kind of sitting around and trying to figure out different ways to make money. And I remember that he would spew out all these crazy ideas, and I would just kind of shoot him down until he convinced me about a web hosting account. And you go on like a reseller account at HostGator, and it says $25 a month, and you can basically have your own hosting company. And I thought it was too good to be true, and it seemed like to us as kids that it would seem like, oh, this is an easy way to make money. And so a week later, we ended up getting into an argument, but there was something about it that just kind of struck a chord with me, that kind of hooked me, if you will. And I just kind of continued it on my own. And if anything, I'd say it kind of gave me a sense of purpose. When I went to school, I was kind of the outcast kid. I didn't really fit in with anybody. I didn't really have any friends. And the business that I had, it kind of gave me a sense of purpose. And so it was like everything I wanted in life. Basically, it's like in between classes, I had a Palm Pilot, and I was, responding to customer emails in school. And immediately once I got back home, I would have like 20, 30 support tickets in my support software that I would have to reply to. So it was a huge stressor at the same time. But it just gave me this kind of purpose, and it gave me like a clear objective in life, because going to school, I think for most people it's can be meaningless, and there's just lots of questions about it. And so having that business, it really I don't know, it helped me get through a lot of the troubles that I had early in life.
One of the things that I noticed on your website when I first started following you is you have like a productivity guide that you wrote.
Mhm.
I forget what the exact title of it is right now. It's been sitting on my desktop for several years, and I reference it quite frequently. So, did you kind of like find that perfect method of being productive, balancing between productivity in your business and in your personal life by starting these businesses and kind of going through the ups and downs with them?
So I'm sure all your listeners are probably aware of the book 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And while I was running all of these businesses, I had my first hosting company, and then all of a sudden I had money, and then I had an interest, and I wanted to bounce off to another business. And so with all the successful businesses I've had, there's many more that have failed or just didn't really go anywhere, or I just lost interest. And it was a constant struggle, because as I started to become successful, it drew me in. And then that's also what taught me so much about how to be an entrepreneur, is that I literally, when I started my company, I think a lot of people, they grow older and they think, oh, I don't know how to do this, or I can't do that, or you've always had a job and you can't fathom the idea of how you would possibly run your own business with all the legal registration and taxes and all that stuff. It just seems overwhelming, and so many people don't do it. But when I was young, I just didn't have that. It was just like, I'm going to do it. And I had no idea what the heck I was doing. I even had to basically beg my mom to open up a merchant account so I could process credit cards. And then I would be getting chargebacks. And it's like, that's like the worst thing whenever you're a business owner. And then you would get chargebacks, or then I would have customers that would be threatening to sue me. And so it's all a part of like all the stress of running a business. But I realized with all these businesses is that I was so involved in it. I was burning myself out. It became a part of me. And especially when I sold my last company, it's like all of a sudden I kind of lost that meaning again. And I ended up focusing on skill sets that I basically neglected. I didn't know that I wanted to fly planes, or I didn't know that I could take really amazing pictures. But I basically stepped back from it. Because I realized when I was running the business, I was the one doing all the design work. I was the one doing all the support tickets. I was the one managing everybody. And it was just overwhelming. And I didn't realize how much I had put myself into the business. And so I would say that really that 4 Hour Work Week, it was a change in my mindset. And so now with the businesses that I have today, I have virtual assistants. Heck, I provide, lots of advice on how to have virtual assistants or how to manage them. And before I was doing everything myself. And so now it's a completely different perspective, where instead of feeling like the business defines me, is that I look at the business as a separate bubble. And my purpose is to basically flower it, water the flower and let it grow on its own. And so that gives me kind of my life back, because that at that one point, for so long when I was young, I was that classic workaholic, and now I've had that perspective of being able to take a step back, look at who I am as a person, what do I value, what do I desire, and be able to look at that separately from the desire of being successful or having a business that grows on its own.
So let me ask you this: for a new entrepreneur, someone who's in that state right now where they're putting, 110% of their life into running their business, and they don't have that personal life. You mentioned that you have virtual assistants. For a new entrepreneur, what is that first step to kind of taking that step back away from complete dedication to that lifestyle and being able to develop your own personal life. What would you recommend someone do?
Well, it's a mindset shift. It's really something where you have to ask, what are you doing on a daily basis, and then also dividing that work up and saying that it's okay not to be completely in control with everything that goes on, and to find out what are you doing on a daily basis that you don't need to be doing on a daily basis. There's so much work involved in running a business, and quite often we just end up running from fire to fire trying to put it out without really making any true progress. And what I like to do is to be able to kind of look back from a big picture perspective and actually lay out the vision, lay out the path of where the business is going. And for me, that's where I find flow. That's where I find that intrinsic motivation that helps me pursue the passion that I have within the business. Because I can certainly tell you, it's not the weekly meetings. It's not going through my horrible inbox every single day. It's not doing all the little administrative tasks. Some things you have to do, but it's by having an administrative team and being able to delegate responsibility, as well as trust other people that you're working with, that they can actually take on and handle some of these things, that you'll start to see over time that you don't need to be working 14-hour days in order to have a successful business. You look at the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, and I realized for the longest time I was overworking on the business and I wasn't being very effective. And so by kind of reflecting on that you can actually ask yourself, what are the most important things I should be working on? And what are the things that need to be done, but I could outsource to somebody else? And that will kind of, it's not like an instant shift, but once you start to have that person or those persons or the business partners in your life, and you're able to find out what are the, as Jim Collins has said, and I like to refer to this a lot, is that it's a great difficulty to find the right people to put on the bus. But once you find the right people, you have to find the right seat for them. And that's a huge other challenge. But by being able to work with these people, delegate responsibilities, it's kind of a subtle shift that changes over time, where at some point in the future, you kind of look back at how you used to work and you're like, wow, it's just a huge, huge shift.
If you don't mind me asking, how does that look from a financial perspective? Because there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who may not necessarily have the money to have a huge team right now, or their business doesn't have that income. So what would you say is kind of like that financial look at that? What is the average cost of getting that kind of help that allows you to delegate and be more of a leader rather than the one doing all the work?
Well, the cheapest way to start out is always going to be finding a dedicated Filipino assistant. You can probably find somebody willing to work for $500 to $600 a month on average, and $500 to $600 a month. Depending on where you're at, that might be insane. You might be like, "There's no way I can spend that money." But when you actually look at the kind of work that they could be doing for you every single day, whether that's doing the bookkeeping on your business on a weekly basis, whether that's organizing your email inbox, whether that's scheduling meetings, those little things, they add up. And if you can actually spend more time focusing on the most important things in the business, then you can also have a more fulfilling personal life. And it's kind of like a feedback loop where you feel more happier and self-fulfilled because you're able to spend more time on the things that actually bring you joy, while working more efficiently on your business, because you're doing the things that actually have the biggest impact. And that adds up over time, and it's like a snowball rolling down a hill. So it's hard to justify at first, but over time, it's just you just can never look back.
So on an average day for you, an average work day, what would you say a schedule looks like for you? Because I want our listeners to be able to understand, this is what you can get to from where you are right now. Because I've definitely been in that state, and then there are days where I still am in that state of I'm overworked. I'm putting in those 14-hour days, like you mentioned, just focusing on the business, jumping around. And as someone who's a bit of a control freak and a little OCD about things, I tend to struggle with delegating and trusting others to do those tasks. So what would you say like an average day looks like for you?
So pretty much, so I like my routine, and I think my routine is essential to my core being in terms of my productivity and my overall well-being and happiness, etc. I used to wake up every day when I was young, and I would just wake up whenever I woke up, and then I would watch an hour of TV, and I would eat a bowl of cereal and milk, and then I went straight to work, and then I'd repeat the same cycle over and over. And I felt compelled to work. And whenever I was hanging out with my friends or it was a weekend or something, I felt this invisible pull back to the business. And it was a horrible feeling to feel that way, because not only are you an actual like a workaholic, but you feel that you pity yourself and you degrade yourself if you're not working. And by kind of balancing out yourself, because there are so many days when you work where you might, at the end of the day, you say, what did I get done today? And you might get nothing done today, where it's like you look back, you didn't really make any progress on your work because you were procrastinating and you didn't really realize it. You just ended up working on emails and tickets or just random stuff all day. That's administrative work, but not really pushing the business forward. That's not really making you feel like you're actually making progress. But I'd say my keystone habits every day is first thing I wake up, and what has been hugely influential is I use the 5-bullet journal. And you can get that from intelligentchange.com, and it's like a $25 little book. And basically it asks you, what are you grateful for? What would make today a really good day? And then as well as a self-affirmation. And this basically teaches your brain to actually start looking out for the positive events that are going on, like those small little wins that occur every single day. And it brings me back to the thought of when I sold my company, and I basically just, I'm in the boardroom with the company as I'm selling it. The lawyer's across the table, and he's on the phone with the bank, and they just literally wired 7 digits to my bank account. And then the CEO of the company walks up to me and he shakes my hand and he says, "How do you feel?" And I said, "Good, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, let's get back to work. We've got a lot of stuff that we need to transfer over." And I didn't really realize until later that I didn't really take time to celebrate that. It was just like, okay, I've met this objective. What's the next thing in my path? And by using a journal, something like this, it teaches you to accept that, to embrace that, to say, you know what, I did a really good job. This is 5 years of my life, and now I just sold it, and this is my reward, and I should be grateful for that. But so I fill that journal out, and then I either go to the gym or I do a 4-mile run. This morning I did a run, and then after that I meditate for 20 minutes, and then I read a book for 30 minutes. And so I like to consider that my mind, my body, and my soul. And I do that every single day. And some days I don't always do all of them, and I don't always do it in the same order, but it's been hugely helpful for me because it kind of sets the foundation for the rest of the day. Where there is this famous speech by an old military guy at UC, or actually no, it was University of Texas. And he said that the one thing that you should do every day is make your bed. And so of course I make my bed, but the basic principle of that is that if you do nothing throughout the day, the one thing that you can say is at least you made your bed. And so for my habits, at least I can say, you know what, I have my habits, and they ground me every single day. They help kind of set my mindset. They help me realize, am I anxious? Am I upset? What am I feeling today? And so that sets my foundation for the day. And then when I get to my computer, then I have all these, productivity apps, my email, I have meetings, et cetera, and it just gets busy. And so it's very hard for me to define exactly what my workday is going to be like. But even before I start any of that, I do have a productivity planner as well. And so the difference between my Todoist, which I'm a huge advocate of Todoist, which is a great minimalist to-do program. But over time, I realized the problem I had with that is that it started, and then it basically had all my administrative tasks. And so I would look at like these big projects that I would need to do, but then I would always procrastinate, and I would do the administrative tasks. And it would make me feel like, oh, what did I get done today? Nothing. And so by having a separate place where I actually go to, that I actually write, and it basically asks me, what are the 3 most important things I can do today? And I write that out before I start anything else, then I can focus on that. And if I do those 3 things, or even just that one thing, I can at the end of the day say, you know what, not only did I do my habits, did I meet my mind, my body, my soul, but I actually accomplished work. I achieved personal growth. And so every day really is a win, no matter what happens.
Really, what it comes down to is you have to start with yourself the moment you wake up. You can't be, waking up 5 minutes before you have to be to work going, okay, I need to get this done. I need to get this done. You have to focus on basically setting the pace, the mood for yourself for that day.
Yeah, set a foundation, and for me, that's having those keystone habits. And I've read tons and tons of books about willpower and habits and all that stuff, and it really it seems to come down to that. Is that if you set the pace for that, there's what's that famous swimmer, Michael Phelps. is it talks about like whenever he like what was going through the Olympics, lots of swimmers sometimes they get water in their eyes, and I mean water through the goggles, and then you can't see, and that basically screws everything up. And so not only does he have this ritual of he does a certain number of laps, he eats certain types of food, but he also trained for the event, in which case, you know, if water got into his goggles, and that actually turned out to be one of his Olympic record swims, is when he actually wasn't able to see. And so he trained for the bad circumstances, but he also set himself in the mindset, in that focused mindset, by having his routine, by having those things that basically set him up for that success. And so if you are able to institute that into your daily workflow, whatever that is, you know, and basically it's just like the idea of whenever I wake up, I don't check my phone and look at my email or look at my Facebook the first thing I do. You know, we're so easily distracted by all these extrinsic things that we really don't take the time to reflect with ourselves, to ask ourselves, how are we feeling? What should we really focus on today? You know, it's just, if you ever think about it, you basically just sit at your computer, and then, I mean, you sit down at your computer and then you just like work on whatever's in front of you. It's very rare that we really take time to look at what we have to do today, what's in our inbox, how should we prioritize a day. So if you can start doing that, then it can have a drastic impact in helping you to work on the most effective things.
Awesome. That's some really encouraging information, and definitely some stuff that I can implement into my own life, and I'm sure our listeners will be able to implement as well. We are starting to run out of time, but I do want to ask you one more question before we go for the day. A while ago, you had posted an article called "I Pitched the CEO of a $1 billion company, and this is what happened." And one of the most inspiring things that I found about the article is that you had the courage and the boldness to give that pitch to a huge company. It was with the CEO of Upwork, and I have used Upwork for work in the past. How do you develop that kind of courage and that kind of boldness to be able to step out and make that move? And has there been any other sort of outcome from that pitch at all?
Yeah, that was an interesting conversation, because the article that I wrote before that was why Upwork sucks. So I was hoping he wouldn't see that article, but you know, ever since then, no, he hasn't contacted me back. But the whole principle is that I basically ended up I basically tweeted the guy, and he ended up tweeting me back, and then he acknowledged an issue that I said that existed with the platform. And it wasn't something I planned out. You know, I didn't start the day thinking, you know what, I'm going to pitch this guy. It was just kind of an opportunity that came up in the moment. And I realized that, you know what, why not? You know, what's the worst that could happen? And this kind of comes back to whether, you know, if you see a girl and you're too afraid to go up to her and ask her a question or to ask her for a phone number, it's that anxiety that we typically have throughout our daily lives, of something, of that little voice in our head that says, you know, we should do this. But then we have this anxiety, that this pushback, and then after it, we feel regret because we feel like we should have done it. And so I've actually trained myself to look out for that, to look out for that little voice, and to be able to kind of be present with it. And if anything, it feels empowering, of course, but I recognize that thought of like, you know, this is an opportunity. Maybe, you know, probably nothing's going to happen. You know, he's probably not going to, you know, sign up for my company, because I basically pitched him like, you know, our company can go and help his company. And so he didn't respond to it. But I didn't let, you know, the thought of rejection stop me from trying, because what's the worst that could happen? He wouldn't reply to me. And that's pretty much what happened. But it was an empowering move. And so that kind of serves as an example for other opportunities that come up in our lives, is that it's important to be able to recognize when an opportunity presents itself, and to also recognize if you have anxiety or a fear regarding that, but then to be able to stop and reflect and ask, you know, what's the worst that could happen? And then compare that with what's the best thing that could happen. Because either way, if you take it upon yourself to try that opportunity and, you know, nothing really happens out of it, that's going to set the stage for creating the mindset of the next time that opportunity comes along and you decide to go for it, you know, something really amazing just might happen to you. And so by adapting that mindset, it can really just have a very subtle but very impactful impact on your life.
That's awesome. I think I didn't know about the article that you had written before the one that I mentioned. That's really funny that you ended up in that scenario. But we are pretty much out of time for this episode. I really do appreciate you taking the time to be on the show today, Cody. It's been great talking to you. Maybe at some point we can have you on again. Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners? Your own website or anything like that?
Certainly, just you could subscribe to my mailing list on CodyMcLain.com. I'm actually coming out with another mini ebook that it's not about productivity, but it's more about life optimization. And the book is titled Life Optimization 101. And I actually go back and talk about like who I was before, and I was somebody who had so many anxieties, and I was afraid, and I was lonely, and all these different things, and basically how I stepped outside of that and how I became a more successful version of who I really want to be. And it kind of talks about my journey throughout that. So definitely visit my website, subscribe to a mailing list, and anybody who's on it, once the book is ready, I'll be sending it out for free.
That's awesome. I definitely look forward to reading that. And for everyone who's listening today, we appreciate you guys reading and listening to everything that we post. You guys can check out Cody's website. We'll also have it linked in the description below. You can feel free to like and subscribe us. And like I say every episode, we have a new episode out every Monday, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, and be blessed.